Hi friends! I am so excited you're here today because I'll be talking about all my favorite horror books of 2023. It is going to be an epic video. It's going to be pretty long, so I will timestamp all the books down below in the description box so you can jump around to hear my opinions. Because it's a lot. I read over 300 horror books this year, and making a top 10 list just was not happening, or even like a top 20 list. I couldn't do it. So here it all is, I guess. I also, these aren't all my 5-star books either. These are the books that I most likely gave 5 stars, or books that stuck with me the longest, like books I still think about, you know, once a day, once a month, you know, like it's still with me, and I feel like that is a good show, a good tell of a really great book that had an effect on you, had an impact on you. So let's get right into it, because again, very, very long. Starting with The Reformatory by Tana and Reeve. I did read this one recently at the beginning of December, and I knew it was going to be like in my top. Amazing, very powerful story. The writing is fantastic, and yeah, it is heart-wrenching. I don't think I cried as much during reading a book all year. It like waited until I read The Reformatory, and I broke down crying for like 15 or 20 minutes in this book. I had to stop listening to it and just go in the bathroom and like cry. So very, very heavy subject matter and great characters. Oh my gosh, I think that's why I cried so much, because like I actually really like the characters in this. So you follow a brother and sister in Jim Crow South in Florida in the 1950s, and the little brother gets taken to the Reformatory, which is based off of the Dozer School for Boys in Florida. Very dark history there. It was open for 111 years. I think in 2012 they found 55 unmarked graves there, and then they found more later on. So dark history. This is based off of kind of true events, I guess, that took place at the school. Just very, very dark. So just a heads up warning on this. It's really tough to read. And also in the author's note, Tana Reeve said that her uncle went to a reformatory school and survived. So yeah, it's crazy. And in her author's note, she lists a bunch of other books to read about the subject matter. So yeah, lots of information in there, but highly, highly recommend. The story is so good too. Like there's something that happens halfway through what I was not expecting, and I was like, dang, like this is so tense. There is not a moment of ease in this book. I feel like it's so high. The stakes are so high. That's what I'm trying to say all the way through, from the first page to the last page of this book. I was so tense. But yeah, magnificent. One of my favorite books this year. And then switching gears to Rachel Harrison's Black Sheep. This is just kind of like a fun going homes type of story, going back to the town you grew up in this case maybe like a religious cult. You're going home, going to a friend's wedding, and some stuff goes down. Let's just say it like that, without giving away, because nobody spoiled this book for me, and I was so happy, like, because you find out something's like 60 pages in, and I was just like, what? That's amazing. I love it. And yeah, it was a ton of fun. I would say, like, because I read the synopsis after, I wouldn't even really read the synopsis, and just know it's about a 23-year-old going home to possibly like a cult religious situation, and she doesn't have a great relationship with her mother. What I loved about this book is there's the feminist vibes in it, like every Rachel Harrison book, but also like the aesthetics, like just how stuff is described in this. I was like all about it. I was like, this is my Pinterest board. Hello. I love it. Thank you. But yeah, super fun, really funny, some great gory parts, and yeah, just a blast. The next book I really liked was Black Ambrosia by Elizabeth Instrom. I actually read a lot of these books that I'm going to talk about today in November, but if you guys didn't know, I lost all my audio to my November wrap up, and I was just like, whatever, I'm going to talk about the ones I liked anyways in this best of video. So here we are. Black Ambrosia is the last paperback from hell I had to read for my 23 and 23, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I was a bit nervous because I read an Elizabeth Instrom book a while ago, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. But yeah, I absolutely love this. It's so good. I would say this is the most like literary paperback from hell you're gonna ever read. It felt very lit fic at times. Maybe like On the Road-esque, but vampires. Very cool. This takes place in the 70s, and it is about a young girl who leaves home after her mother dies, and she's just kind of transient. She's just hitchhiking around America, and something, you know, happens. She's a young lady. She looks like a child. Something happens, and some stuff goes down. Let's just say that. I felt like why I like this so much is what Elizabeth Instrom was saying, right? You are young and vulnerable, and you're going out into this world that is the United States. What is it gonna make you? What is the reflection of you? Oh, you're gonna be a vampire. Yep. And then I highly suggest everybody just read this book for Christmas, please, because it is so much fun, and that is Candy Cane Kills by Brian McCauley. This is one of the funnest slashers I've read in a really long time, and also you care about the characters. It's just so much fun. It's so much, it got me into the Christmas spirit. I read it before it came out in November, and I was just like, yes, I'm going to decorate this year. I'm going to wrap presents. I'm gonna be merry as fuck, you know. I'm in it. I'm in it. This is about a family in early 2000s, I believe, or 1999, 2000s-ish, and they rent a cabin in the woods and for Christmas, because it's like some stuff is going on with their family, but dysfunctional, and this is kind of like a last attempt to make a lasting good Christmas. But little do they know, there is a killer in the cabin, or yeah. So yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of unique kills that were very Christmassy. I love that. I love the incorporation of all of the festivities in the kills. And yeah, highly, highly recommend reading Candy Cane Kills by Brian McCauley for your Christmas or your holiday. It's just gonna make it a lot better. Okay, so the next books I'm gonna talk about are two extreme books. I actually didn't have a lot of extreme horror on my best of list, which I felt like was kind of weird, but also I might not have read a ton of it this year. Starting with Home Invasion by C. Kumanazar. I always mispronounce the last name. But this is a novella that I read for my Home Invasion vlog back in November, and it ended up being one of my most favorite things I read in that vlog. This is about a couple that home invade a family and test the couple in this family, like how much they love each other, what will they do, but there's a bit of a twist in it, and that was so fun. I was just like, yes, I love it. 5 stars, and it's like 100 pages. It was like super fun to read. Another book is The Resurrectionist by Rath James White. Okay, I did not give this book 5 stars actually, but it has freaking stuck in my brain. So I think it's great because it's there in my head and I cannot stop thinking about it. So this is about a guy who notices his new neighbors move in, and he's like, oh, I think the wife is kind of hot. I'm going to kill her and resurrect her and her husband every single night. Of course, the wife knows immediately something's up, and yeah, it's just so wild. It's It's gross, it's disturbing. What I liked about this is that it did feel like a bit vintagey. I think it's like 2010s vibes, like with video cameras and all that stuff. And I really like the ending though. I feel like this is one of the best extreme horror endings that I've read in a really long time. So if you want to be super grossed out and super disturbed, highly recommend The Resurrectionist. And you guys know I had to talk about The Nestlings by Nate Cassidy. I absolutely loved this book. This is this whole video. I'm like, oh my gosh, I loved it. So good. So this is about a couple who had like one of the worst years of their life, but also supposed to be the happiest years of their life. The wife ends up becoming disabled after giving birth to their daughter. She's in a wheelchair, and they are just, you know, having a newborn and having this life-changing event at the same time. It's not great, you know, like people like to be like, oh, it's the happiest time, but it's like, it's hard, right? And they talk about that a lot in this book, which I thought was really interesting, because you don't ever get like people talking about how hard it is. And this couple, finally, their luck changes and they win a lottery in New York City to move into the Deptford, which is a very fancy apartment building. But when they move in, things aren't as they seem, and it is so crazy. There are a couple scenes in this book that absolutely gave me goosebumps. I have goosebumps thinking about it. My whole side right now is like goosebumps. Oh my gosh. Lots of dark hallways with like just noises and stuff. Like, oh my gosh, so scary. Highly recommend. And the next book I really liked was Jawbone by Monaco Oheda. This book is wild. So it is about two girls who kidnap their teacher, and they also like worship this god that is a white alligator, but it might be real, or like it might hold real powers and stuff. Oh my gosh, it's freaking wild. And the ending, I was just like, oh my gosh, so crazy. It's like an A24 movie, and I would love to see this actually adapted. I think it would be so fun. This is kind of told like, I almost said Jade-esque, like from My Heart is a Chainsaw, like essay format. Like one of the girls in this writes a lot of essays, especially about horror, and it just gave me Jade vibes. So if you are a fan of My Heart is a Chainsaw, you'll probably enjoy Jawbone. The next book I absolutely loved was Soichi by Junji Ito. Actually, I think all the Junji Itos I read this year, I gave 5 stars. Love it. I love it. So this one is a little bit different. It is short stories, but they are all surrounded around Soichi. And Soichi likes to do weird things. He likes to hang out in the attic. He's just very weird. He has nails in his mouth because he has an iron deficiency and he's sucking on nails all the time. And you know what? He's kind of... He's not only creepy, he's also kind of annoying and a bit of a troublemaker. Let's just say that. I absolutely love this. Actually, the ending of this kind of connects to some other Junji Ito work, and I was just like, yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. I am asking for the physical copy for Christmas, so hopefully I'll get it. The next book I absolutely loved was DrencRom by Hamlin Bird. This is a little horror novella. It is like a psychedelic drug novella. I had a lot of fun with it. I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did, and I think I liked it so much because of how zany it got at the end. I was like, oh dang, that is crazy. But it's very, very trippy. It's about a girl that meets somebody online who gets a drug, and yeah, some stuff goes down. You could tell this book pulled from like A Clockwork Orange and Brave New World. There's actually quotes at the beginning of each section from those books. So if you like kind of like a trippy book about drugs, I highly recommend DrencRom. The next book I absolutely loved was Rouge by Mona Awad. I honestly did not think I would like this book that much because I did DNF'd All's Well by Mona Awad. Was it this year or last year? I don't remember. I started listening to that one and I just couldn't get into it. But I freaking loved Rouge. It is just as trippy, I feel like, but not as hive-mindy and annoying as Bunny, which I still love Bunny. That book changed my life, but Rouge is just as trippy and weird, but I really liked where it went, and also it kept you guessing because you're like, what is happening here? What is going on? So we follow a lady who is obsessed with skincare and like lotions and everything like that, but like honestly, who isn't in this like influencer age whatever dystopian we live in, and her mom was kind of the same way, but her mom ends up passing away, so she moves back into her house and she notices like these vials from a certain spa, and this spa reaches out and she ends up going, and the spa is crazy. It's just nuts. But yeah, I absolutely loved this one. It was super weird, and the writing was great. It gave me like Alice in Wonderland vibes throughout too, almost like a fairy tale-esque, like Snow White, Cinderella, all that fun stuff. But yeah, highly recommend Rouge. Okay, so I have a double feature here. I have the Cotton Candy Massacre by Christopher Robertson and the sequel, Part Toots. You guys, these were so fun. A blast, an absolute delight. So starting with the first one, you are following a bunch of teenagers going to a carnival that has been reopened after a massacre, and there is the cotton candy machine. That is all I'm going to say. Some really gruesome kills. I really like the twist in this. I did not see coming. This ends up being one of my favorite freaking horror tropes of like all time, and seeing that mixed in with like a killer clown situation, the visuals in it were just amazing. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one, and then I read Part Toots, which follows directly this book for the most part. It might be like a week or yeah, I think it's like a week after. But we're in like a Chuck E. Cheese situation going on with animatronics and games and really gross pizza. But yeah, so fun. Highly recommend both of these. I gave them both 5 stars, and you know, this was my year for clown horror. I honestly think I read a lot of clown books, and these two won. The next book I feel like I did not talk about enough this year, and that is Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. This is, I think, Chuck Tingle's horror debut. I kept saying that. I think he did write another book, but this is a new horror book from the funny smut author, who I hear those books are actually like really cute or whatever, and like have like these great themes. So anyways, Camp Damascus is about a gay conversion camp, and a girl who goes there. Well, that's what you think, but it actually flips the script, and you start out just following a girl who is very much in her church. She's well, she's supposed to be graduating. She's 21. Their like church stays on another 2 years, or she's 20, and it's just very weird. Like, she's like saying the most religious stuff. Her family is saying the most religious stuff. Like, it's very alien almost, like how she's speaking. But then you figure out, as more stuff gets revealed, after she starts throwing up flies. This was so good. I really liked how you go in expecting one thing, and you think this story is going to be told in like a traditional format, but he switches it on you, and you're like, yes! And there's some great characters. I actually cared about the freaking romance in this, and I never care about romance in anything ever. But I was like, yes, I I feel for these people. It reminded me of like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind meets like The Exorcist or something. It was fantastic, and I'm so excited for more horror from Chuck Tingle, and you guys, love is real. Okay, so the next book I did give 5 stars. I read it in my Unhinged Women reading blog, and that is Bethany's Sin by Robert R. McCammon. Do I like this as much as Usher's Passing? I don't think so, but it has stuck with me this year. This story has stuck with me. You know, every time I think about just current state of affairs, I think about Bethany's Sin, okay? I'm like, you know what? We need a freaking town like Bethany's Sin. Let's just say in this town, all the women are in charge, but the men are terrified. They're terrified to walk the streets. Oh no. And yeah, it gets so zany and crazy, and I absolutely loved it. And we need more towns like Bethany's Sin in the United States. Let's just say that. And the next book was actually my first book club pick for the Reaper book club that I launched this year in the summer, and that is Queen of Teeth by Haley Piper. I had so much fun reading this book with you guys. Oh my gosh, what a way to kick off a freaking book club than to read a book about a woman experiencing a genetic mutation from a freaking pharmaceutical company that poisoned her, and you just getting teeth, you know, down there. Yeah, so good. And it's like really fast paced, and there's like a lot going on. This takes place in a dystopian United States that feels oddly like present, and yeah, so good. The ending of this gets so huge, and like it's like almost like an action-y horror movie, but yeah, I absolutely loved it, and highly recommend Queen of Teeth. So this is one of the maybe 2 really weird books I have on this list, and that is Touch the Night by Max Booth III. I read this for Kelsey's book club pick this year from Simon Slashers, and I loved it. It is so weird though. This is kind of said like Stranger Things meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I see those things in that, but more Texas Chainsaw Massacre in it, but yeah, very weird. So this is about these boys that are kidnapped by cops who are not cops, they're something else, and they're taken to a basement. The stuff in the basement is horrifying. The whole house is horrifying, but the stuff in the basement is kind of funny. Like, it has that Max Booth humor in it, while we get chapters of their mothers trying to find them. This took a really weird turn, an insanely weird turn, and I was just like, what is happening? I love it. Amazing. If you are fans of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think you'll really like this one. It's kind of like a modern take on it, even though I think this takes place in 2006, but it has like more modern themes in it. The next book I ended up really liking was Disappearance at Devil's Rock by Paul Tremblay. I never see this book talked about, but I hope I talked about it a lot this year. I read this for one of my coming of age reading vlogs, one of them. One of them. I only did one, but I really liked this book. It is about a mother looking for her son who disappeared while out hiking with his friends, and you get like a changing story. It's very reminiscent to Lake Mungo, that like mockumentary horror, and yeah, it's so emotional, and like the ending, oh, chills. I have chill factor again here. The ending freaked me out, actually. I was like, oh no. Okay, so this is one of the other weird books that I ended up reading, was Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano, and I absolutely loved it. So this is about a guy looking for his sister, but he ends up on this island where everybody's always watching like the OJ car chase from that time period, and they're dressing like the 90s and they're playing 90s music and stuff, and he's like, this is cool, I guess, but like, why? I don't get it. And where that mystery goes, and also what happened to his sister. It is a bit of a slow burn, but the beginning of it like hooks you in, and it feels like very David Lynch-esque about like what happens in this book. I think if you like vintagey 90s stuff and you like mysteries and with a bit of like really weird stuff happening, you'll definitely like Down 11. Another really weird book I read this year that I loved was A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This is very weird, but such a great summer horror book. This is about a woman who moves back in with her mom, and her mom's acting a bit weird, okay? They live in the South. I think it's North Carolina. And her mom starts acting like her grandma, actually, who wasn't the nicest person. And I think that's all I can say about this one. There's vultures in this and a rose garden. So let's just say that. The next book I absolutely loved this year was Lone Woman by Victor Laval. This has one of my absolute favorite characters I read this year. Big main character energy here. Adelaide was so fierce and fun and smart, and absolutely loved the way the story unfolded. So we follow Adelaide. She's moving to Montana from Texas after a fire. It does say in the synopsis what happened, but let's just say there was a fire, and she's moving to Montana to claim her plot of land, and with a big trunk that is that might have a monster in it. But that's all I'm going to say. What this ended up being, I was not expecting this story to like hit me in the heart so hard, but yeah, I absolutely loved it. I love the ending, and this is actually my favorite Victor Laval book. And the next book is NightBlood by somebody by T. Chris Martindale. So this is a paperback from hell. I read this for my vampire reading blog this year, and it was so good. Oh my gosh. So I'm always been, always been nervous going into a paperback from hell. You're like, oh gosh, this was written in the 80s. Ooh, it's going to be like bad, right? It's going to be really bad. But when it's good, it's so good, So we're following a guy who is hunting vampires after he's in Vietnam, and his brother is a ghost that he can see, and his brother helps him hunt these vampires. That sounds so crazy, but it is so good. There's like small town horror in this that just like is so intense. There's some really great action scenes in this, and I absolutely loved it. If you're looking for a good vampire book, I highly recommend NightBlood. Next book I actually really liked was a middle grade book called The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. This is kind of one of those dark middle grade books, of course, right? I would say this is a horror book. A small boy we follow gets strong in this. I think he ends up just going into the holiday house, but it's like this eccentric dude's house that is a holiday house. So he basically goes through all these different holidays, and of course he has to make some tough decisions and stuff like that. It kind of gave me like Halloween Tree vibes by Ray Bradbury, and the house is the ocean at the end of the lane. You know, the ocean. By Neil Gaiman. But yeah, very weird, very dark, but also has all those holiday vibes because it is a holiday house. And the next book I ended up really liking was Dead Girls Blues by David Sodergren. I read this for the slasher readathon. This is a slasher, but it's more of like a giallo style slasher, like the Black Glove Killer, around a girl who finds a cell phone video on a girl who ends up dying in her arms of something horrific happening, and it's basically like this big goes all the way to the top, right, thing kind of tracking down her killers, and where it ends up going, and some of the scenes in this were so freaking disturbing. Like, I'm thinking about it right now and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was no. It felt very much like a giallo movie, but like not boring. I feel like those can be kind of boring sometimes. But yeah, very, very good. The ending was so nihilistic. I loved it. So yeah, highly suggest Dead Girl Blues. Speaking of slashers, you knew I was going to talk about Don't Fear the Reaper by Stephen Graham Jones. I loved it. I loved it. It's very different from My Heart is a Chainsaw, though. We follow multiple characters in the sequel, and it feels more like a slasher. There's like more action. The villain is like very much a villain in this, like scary. What's going on? There's a disgusting scene in this that I happened to be listening to while driving to work, and I might have thrown up a little bit. I gagged a little, and then like maybe a little tiny bit of puke came up. I don't think I ever talked about that. But it was so good. We do get Jade back, and it's kind of funny because Jade has not been around for a couple years, so she's not up to date on all the new horror, and there's like a little bit of a horror renaissance that happened. I think it's like 2014 or whatever, 2015 time, maybe before then, and so these people are going off of those rules, but Jade doesn't know. I really liked that. I loved everything about this, and I cannot wait for the third book in this trilogy. I'm so excited. Okay, so it might look a little different. I had to switch out my battery and also run a quick errand. So I ended up taking like an hour break filming this. So let's get right back to it. The next book I really liked is Familiar Spirit by Lisa Tuttle. This is another paperbacks from Howlett that I ended up reading, and I actually buddy read this with Kelsey and Andrew, and it was just so much fun to buddy read because it's so zany. This is about a woman who moves into a new house, and there's stuff going on in the house, but what it ends up being, I actually wasn't expecting it. But yeah, it's just really crazy, and this cover is amazing as well, and actually like happens in the book. Also, I like tabbed this one, but I don't remember why I tabbed it, honestly. I think I tabbed the stuff that was really funny to me. I will say some cats do die in this, but it wasn't like overly graphic or anything like that. If anything, it was just kind of showing like how kind of zany this book is. But yeah, a super fun time. And another zany book I ended up really liking this year was Gnelfs. This is such a crazy premise. Okay, so this is about a TV show called Gnelfs, and this little girl is watching it, but the Gnelfs start to talk to her and tell her these horrific things like your mom's a whore or whatever, you know, like talking crap about her mom, and the girl is obviously very disturbed by this, but it only gets like more zany and crazy, and where it goes, I was like, hell yeah. I was there for it. I really liked where this story ended up going and like how big it ended up being. It was really interesting and fun, and yeah, just really kooky and zany good time. Moving on to like kind of a serious book from all that zaniness, Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a little novella I read, I think for Escape the Readathon, and it was so devastating. It's so sad. This is like a grief horror book about a young boy who lost his father, but he thinks that his father is haunting his house and he's seeing him. It's kind of devastating and really sad. And yeah, just that great writing that Stephen Graham Jones always, I feel like, brings to the table, and you're engrossed in it, and it's like very moving and also creepy. But yeah, absolutely loved Mapping the Interior. It was really pretty. So the next book you guys know I was going to talk about, and that is Maeve Fly by C.J. Liddy. This is a American psycho but female type of story. Our main character Maeve works in Disneyland as a certain ice princess. It's never said, but you kind of get what kind of princess she is, but her actual life is much darker, and you know, she has some very dark tendencies in this book, and you know, she's supposed to be unlikable, I guess, and like a villain, but I actually like, I mean, of course I wouldn't do these things, but her reasoning was like there, I feel like. I don't know. She also is a huge fan of Halloween, and great music, books, movies, and all that jazz. And there's also a romance in this, which was just okay for me, but I feel like it did add to the ending a lot. There's great LA vibes in this, and I loved it. Halloween vibes, LA vibes. It's brutal, it's gory, it's also kind of sad, and yeah, so great. I absolutely loved it. The next book I actually really liked this year was Take Your Turn, Teddy by Haley Newland, and this isn't going to be for everybody. This book is mostly a procedural detective story, but we start out following a boy and his mom who just left his abusive father, and his abusive father ends up tracking them down. So very heavy from the start. It gave me Stephen King vibes, like The Shining vibes, but then something happens, and then the second half of the book is like a detective story, serial killer story, and I thought that was so interesting because I did not expect that from this book. And you guys know I like detective stories for the most part, like really gritty, dark serial killer detective stories, not a cozy mystery or anything. This is violent, this is sad and disturbing, and it was so good. Next book you guys know I was going to talk about because I absolutely loved it, and I feel like it's one of those books that is just like a lifetime favorite book that I know I'm going to reread at some point in my life when I need it the most, and that is Blackwater by Michael McDowell. This is technically 6 books. This is the bind up of it. It was released in like a series back in the day. This is technically a paperback from hell that I counted, and it's magnificent. It is about a small town in Alabama. I believe it's like Perito, and we follow the Caskey family, and it starts off with a guy after a flood, in a boat, and he sees a woman like in a window at the flooded downtown area. I think it's like a hotel, and he ends up falling in love with this woman, but little does he know this woman has a connection to the Blackwater River that runs through the town, and yeah, it's so great. It's like a slow burn family saga type of story with supernatural elements. Also, like, you could say it's like a bit cosmic as well, like very light cosmic horror happens in this, but that's not really like what scared me in this. There are some really creepy supernatural scenes with ghosts, but it was actually just the overall family and like them living and loving and learning and like, I don't know, just having a lot of regular family issues to deal with, and like, what is a life if you haven't loved during it, you know? Like, it had like these deep moments for me, and this is another book that had me bawling at the end of it. I cried for like 20 minutes. So good. And you know what, I did not pick up another McDowell book, I don't think, after I read this one this past year. I just like could not. So the next one is The Cipher by Kathy Koja. Oh my gosh, this book, I actually did think about this book the other day. You want to know why? Because I was walking in my neighborhood and there was this big hole of a crack or whatever in a wall or something, and I was like, it's the fucking Cipher! Oh my god! So this is a very dark book. And it's very weird. If you're looking for answers, you're not going to get any here. It's just like cold and hard, but where it goes, I really liked it. I liked its concept of art, with like religion and stuff, and also like relationships and how they can be really crappy and you just like kind of need out. But yeah, we follow a couple that are on their way breaking up, and they discover like a hole in the wall in this apartment and some weird stuff starts happening around it, and they decide to videotape it. So it does have that mixed media vibe to it. But yeah, very, very weird, nihilistic, cold, but also like really beautifully written. So right up my alley. I absolutely loved it, and I highly recommend, if you're looking to get into some paperbacks from hell, to start with the Cipher, because you'll just be like, what did I just read? That was so crazy. And the next book you guys know I was going to talk about, I've seen it on a couple people's list, and that is episode 13 by Craig DeLuey. I loved this book. I did do the audio with it, and I think that added to my enjoyment of it because the audio is full cast, it is creepy, it has sound effects, it has the singing in it, it has all the things in it, and it was just so much fun. We follow a camera crew for a reality TV show, like ghost hunting show. They go to a house in Virginia, I believe it's Virginia, to record an episode, and of course things do not go as planned. This was very House of Leaves-esque, and it feels like a little bit of a homage to House of Leaves. So if you're a fan of that one, you'll probably like this one. If you like found footage, I think this is one of the best found footage books I've ever read. And also there's some big themes talked about in this book, and it's just like these big questions that kind of usually fall into the sci-fi genre, but it was in this horror book, which I really liked. I like having big questions being talked about in books. So yeah, highly recommend this one. The ending is so good too. One of my favorite endings of the year happens in this one, and I was just like, oh my gosh, amazing. I would love to see an adaptation of this. So good. Also ends up being one of my favorite subgenres, so you guys know I loved it. Okay, so I only have a couple more books to talk about, so let's do it. Exquisite Corpse by Billy Martin. Freaking fantastic. This is a serial killer romance. I would say this is like splatterpunk extreme horror. But it's not, I feel like extreme horror sometimes can be really like in your face and like exploitative and like, this is what we're doing here. This is really subtle almost with the horror stuff until like certain part, until the end in certain parts. But what you're getting is like these connections you're making in your head, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's dark. But basically these two serial killers meet up. Are they in love? I don't know. They like the same things. I don't know. So yeah, really disturbing stuff. I think what's so disturbing in this one is that you get the POV of one of the victims, and that like left me feeling so numb after I read this. It's so dark, nihilistic, right up my alley, and gruesome but beautiful, and yeah, highly recommend reading Exquisite Corpse. One of my favorite books I think of all time as well. And you guys know I had to talk about this book because I absolutely loved it, and what a way to kick off an awesome reading year for horror, and that is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I absolutely love this book so much. Is it technically the title? Does it go with the title? Does it go with the cover? This story? No. But what it ends up being, I absolutely loved. It is a story about a brother and sister going through their parents' house after a sudden death. And there's grief, there's like strained relationships. They're pretty much estranged, the brother and sister. And I think just like not knowing everything, like you don't see the point of view that your siblings get, right, from growing up. I thought it was a really interesting aspect to this book, and it felt very real for even like the zany premises in this, even when it shifts a POV And we get the brother's POV, and he goes to like this school thing where he gets into some stuff. And at first I was like, no, that can't be real. And then I thought about it, and there is something very similar here in Richmond that could happen. So it brought it back to reality for me. Even the zany end was still so emotional. I felt a lot of feelings during it. And yeah, it was so fantastically done. It's scary. I just loved it. I loved it so much. I loved like the reveal in this too is done in a really clever way. So good. I'm so excited for Grady Hendrix's next book, but this one is going to be really hard to top for me. And we're actually ending on a collection of stories where I'm very surprised. I actually really like this collection of stories from Lisa Tuttle, A Nest of Nightmares. This was one of the first paperbacks from hell I read this year, and it was so bizarre. Oh my gosh. But the first story in this is called Bug House, and it's so freaking dark and disturbing, but also like the way this was written was so well. Oh my gosh, so good. I know I had to pull it up to see the Horse Lord, the Other Mother. So good. I still remember that one, and the ending one, The Nest. Oh my gosh. Oh, ooh. Very creepy. So good. I definitely love Lisa Tuttle's writing and her stories, and yeah, I'm excited to find more in 2024 to devour. But yeah, highly recommend the short story collection. They're usually really tough for me, but I think it being all the same author, it just like worked for me. Okay, there you have it. That was the best books of 2023. I feel like I just ran a marathon. I guess I kind of did all year, right? Let me know some of your favorite books from 2023. It doesn't have to be horror, it can be anything. If you guys have any recommendations though for any horror books that I need to check out in 2024, please let me know in the comments down below. And I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Bye!